Hello, my name is Edwin and I'm the Vice President of Heart for Iran. If you've told me 15 years ago that there would be a virtual church summit, I wouldn't have believed you. Yet here we are getting together, sharing, strategizing, and giving testimony to this new and exciting platform that extends the church beyond her physical boundaries. This movement among Iranians started back in 2003 when two ministers and I started a website targeting the isolated Farsi-speaking Christians of Iran, which later became this base for the online church we ran for 6 years. Because Iran is a closed country, there is a severe restrictions on many aspects of Iranian lives, including accessing information, cultural transformation, international relationships, and many other areas of life, including the Church of Iran. Registered churches, once active among Muslims, are now being shut down, and house churches under constant threat. The church in general is under great persecution and very much underground. As a result, people, even though longing for Christian fellowships, are thinking twice before attending a house church. Church leaders are conducting lengthy vetting process to ensure that those joining the church are truly Christians. Even with great persecution and vetting process, the house churches are increasing in numbers. This was the main reason we started a church, which later became known as the online church. If you remember back in the days, Yahoo and its messenger that provided the conference rooms with audio and video capabilities, Skype didn't really start until 2003, and it gained momentum until 2012 when the Microsoft took over. So we had to use what was available and accessible in Iran. Today, however, Skype, Zoom have become a regular part of our weekly activities. We started our conference fellowship once a week and then increased it into 4 times a week and lasted 2 hours each session. Just to give you an idea of what our session looked like, let me just explain what we did. On Tuesdays, we had our theology classes. In these classes, we taught systematic theology to a small group of mature Christians. On Thursdays, we had a Bible study that we taught Gospels and verse by verse. We went through the books. On Fridays, we had a question and answer sessions where people would ask tons of questions about Christian faith. And on Sundays, we had our church service, which and maybe a guest speaker would share the word. All the sessions began with worship and ended with question and answer time. In just a few short years, the number of people who registered grew to over 3,000 people. And by registering, I mean not referring to our MailChimp account. These were people who filled out a form that asked several personal questions because we had little experience and minimal training in marketing techniques. Also, Facebook was nowhere near as popular as it is today, so we didn't have any effective social media platform to promote the fellowship. Not long after our start, the Iranian government started online newspapers and websites criticizing the church. However, one website in particular, related to University of Technology in Tehran, analyzed the idea of online fellowship and the use of technology in forming a virtual community, which was positive and encouraging to us. During this time, we witnessed hundreds of salvations, being mindful that the idea of foundations and reporting was very foreign to us. So we didn't really care about putting out reports. However, the numbers we observed were a source of great encouragement to us. There were even members who got married when they got connected through this online community. And to this day, we have solid Christian leaders who have great influence among Iranians who got trained in these classes. Please remember, this was during 2003 to 2009, when the idea of having a virtual community was considered heretical, and many of my fellow pastors were not comfortable calling this an online church. We need to come to understanding and a realization that technology is shaping us and the way we live. If you don't believe me, just look back at the history of technology and how far it has come to such a short time. It changes the way we access and process information. It changes the entertainment. It changes our health. It changes our politics. And it changes the way we relate to each other. It changes the very fabric of our society. I'm sure many of you have read Marshall McLuhan's ideas, media as a medium, and how it is an extension of the human body. The idea that technology is an extension of human organism is an idea that many have talked about regularly in the history of thought about technology. As camera is an extension to our eyes and cars an extension to our feet, so our computers are extension of our minds. So let it be said that virtual community is an extension of our society. Now, many argue that virtual community do not create real, tangible, and genuine relationships. However, our practical experience proves otherwise. Listen, we need to realize and admit to the fact that the church has always had a hard time embracing technology and its effects. To this day, we are still resistant to the idea of virtual church. We are, in a sense, traditionalists. We change, but we change reluctantly. And then this new change that we embrace, after a while becomes a sacred thing, and we don't want to let go of what we have transformed into. The church was a pioneer in copying books, and later on started a new sacred tradition when we began decorating Bible manuscripts and produced illuminated manuscripts. When the printing machine became popular, even though many, especially reformers, took the advantage of it, the church in general had a hard time letting its tradition go. Remember when TV was a thing? The church I was part of called TV devil's box. When satellite became popular, we were told explicitly that we were not allowed to have them. However, now we all have a TV, most of us, if not all of us, and we are Netflix subscribers. You see, we use these mediums, TVs, radios, podcasts, YouTube, or to reach people for Christ. We are in the process of the change, but for some reason, we just don't want to admit that we approve of it. Some understood the change and took advantage of it. When the Church of the Fools first launched on May 19, 2004, more than 41,000 people visited this virtual church based in the UK. News outlets from London Times to the BBC and CNN covered the story. Or if you're familiar with the Second Life virtual experience, I'm sure that you know of the Anglican Cathedral that purchased virtual real estate to have a virtual church in that world. The most popular church of the 21st century may turn out to be the virtual church. We can see at the beginning of the 21st century that the church is changing, not in style, venue, feel, or volume, but in the way which it exists. Please hear me. I'm not suggesting that church needs to be transformed into a digital community. Furthermore, I do not agree with Mark Zuckerberg's statement that Facebook could replace the church. The point I'm trying to make, and the challenge I believe we are facing, is getting people to understand that the virtual community is, in fact, an extension to our community. It is not the replacement. It is the evolution of how our society connects to 21st century. This virtual community has many common characteristics of physical relationship. However, in many ways it is different because it exists in a different world that offers different capabilities. It removes some limitations and also imposes others. It is time to realize we are talking about a real community. The challenge for the church today is that we do not have a robust theology of technology. There are books out there which tackles this aspect of theology, and there are some theologians who are helping the church from different theological perspectives regarding technology, but it is not the center of attention. The reality is more pastors and Christians are making use of internet, online platforms, and the virtual world. Even Barna Research Group says that. Today, nearly 9 in 10 pastors say that they believe it is theologically acceptable for church to provide faith assistance or religious experience to people through the internet. 87% of them. This is up from 78% of pastors in 2000. Similarly, nearly 9 in 10 pastors today say that they think people in their area would find it acceptable for their church to provide faith assistance or religious experience to people through the internet. 86% of them. And this is, of course, an increased percentage from the year 2000. By embracing technology, the need to understand how technology relates to discipleship, church leadership, sacraments, and the church model is being felt more than ever before. We need to grow past the argument of whether the virtual or online community can be considered a church and ask the question, with this new extension of our society, how can we develop a sound theology that recognizes technology? Yes, there is much to be discussed in regarding ecclesiology, Christian formation, leadership training, mission, but we need to do so by learning from our past and putting into action what we've learned by utilizing technology we have. whether it is online community, virtual reality, augmented reality, and etc. Now, I'd like to wrap this up by touching on our vision for Heart for Iran. We not only recognize it is time to start a theological conversation on ecclesiology, mission, and ethics as it relates to technology within the cyber world, but also invest and come up with solid and effective strategies to utilize the virtual world so we can preach the gospel and disciple the converts. The very essence of the gospel is geared toward a community that is God-centered. The virtual community poses a real opportunity for the gospel to advance beyond borders, which is very definition of the Great Commission. Just to clarify a few things, since there is not enough time for me to dive into all these topics regarding this matter. The application of the mission of the church changes when it comes to the cyber world, but the concept of the church needs to stay the same. If we continue in our belief that the local church, by classical definition, is the only application of the church, we are limiting the work and the mission of the church through virtual means. Welcome to the Church version 3.0.